The Hells Angels biker followed the little girl to a buried trapdoor, and the vault below threatened powerful ghosts. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's tale. It begins on a cold evening in the middle of nowhere when a weathered biker named Jake, known by his brothers as Reaper, was riding through the desolate roads of the rural countryside. His leather jacket, emblazoned with the Hells Angels insignia, flapped against the chilling wind as his bike roared through the empty streets. Jake's mind was consumed with thoughts of the past and the lost brotherhood he once had. As the motorcycle's engine hummed steadily, something unusual caught his eye, a faint flicker of light off to the side of the road. At first, he thought it might be a reflection, but the light pulsed again, this time stronger and clearer. Curiosity gnawed at him. He pulled his bike over and dismounted, his boots crunching against the frozen gravel as he looked towards the source of the light. There, in the distance, was a small figure, a little girl, no older than 8 or 9, standing alone in the growing darkness. She was dressed in an oversized coat that barely reached her knees, her face pale and streaked with dirt. Despite the eerie quiet of the night, the girl seemed completely unaffected by the cold, her eyes fixed on Jake with an unsettling intensity. "Are you lost?" Jake called out, his voice rough, accustomed to the loud noises of the biker world. The little girl didn't answer at first. She simply nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving his. There was something strange about her presence. No child should be out here alone, especially not in the middle of nowhere. "What's your name, kid?" Jake asked, stepping closer but still keeping a respectful distance. The girl took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for something important. "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You're not scared of me, are you?" Jake chuckled softly, though there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Not really. I'm just a guy on a bike." He glanced around, scanning the empty road, the trees that lined it. There was no one else in sight. "Where are your parents?" The girl's gaze dropped to the ground. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Jake felt the weight of the silence. Something was wrong. Finally, she whispered, "I need to show you something." Jake frowned. "Show me what?" Lily didn't answer directly. She simply turned and began walking toward a nearby patch of overgrown land. With each step, Jake felt an odd sense of urgency building within him, as if something beyond his control was pulling him along. He followed her, unsure of what he was about to discover, but unwilling to leave the child in the darkness. They came upon an old stone wall, partially hidden by vines and moss. The faint light from the girl's hand illuminated the area. She crouched down in front of a weathered stone, and, with surprising strength, she pushed it aside to reveal a trapdoor beneath. The door creaked as it opened, revealing a dark, musty passageway leading down into the earth. The air smelled damp, as if the tunnel had been forgotten by time itself. "What's down there?" Jake asked, his instincts telling him to be cautious, yet unable to resist the mysterious pull of the situation. The girl looked up at him, her face serious. "A vault, and it's waiting for you." Jake hesitated. Something in her tone was too knowing, too certain. But the curiosity that had always defined him as a Hells Angel was too strong. He stepped forward, taking the first step down into the darkness. The moment his foot touched the cold, stone steps, a chill ran through him, deeper than the winter air. He could feel it, something ancient and powerful, something that didn't belong in this world. As he followed Lily deeper into the tunnel, the weight of the air around them seemed to grow heavier. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the narrow passage, leading them to a large, ancient vault door, its metal surface covered in cryptic symbols. Lily reached out and placed her small hand on the door. The vault below is home to something that has been locked away for a long time. Something powerful, but it's ready to be freed. Jake's heart raced. What had he gotten himself into? And what, or who, was lying behind that vault door? I watched as Lily slowly stepped toward the massive, rusted vault door. The eerie silence of the underground chamber pressed in on me like a heavy weight. The air was damp, the faint smell of decay lingering in the cold, stone walls. She reached out with one small hand and touched the surface of the vault, her fingers brushing against the cryptic symbols etched into its metal exterior. As she did, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, an odd sensation of something ancient stirring deep within the stone. I stood behind her, unsure of what to do next. The little girl had led me here, but what did she know about this place? She couldn't possibly understand the danger that was about to unfold. "What's inside?" I finally asked, my voice rough, betraying the unease that had started to settle in my chest. Lily's eyes never left the vault as she spoke in a tone that was both matter-of-fact and oddly haunting. "A power older than time itself, and it's ready to be released." Her words sent a cold ripple through me. "Power? What kind of power?" She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached up and gently pushed against the vault door. To my surprise, it gave way with a low creak, the hinges groaning as if awakening from a centuries-long slumber. The door swung open with an unnerving slowness, revealing a dark, cavernous space beyond. I took a cautious step forward, but Lily remained still, standing at the threshold as if waiting for something. The darkness inside the vault seemed to pulse, almost alive. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't. Some force, was pulling me toward it. I stepped inside, my boots scraping against the stone floor as I crossed the threshold. The air inside was thicker, colder, and the moment I entered, a low hum filled the space, like a distant vibration in the bones. I froze, my senses on high alert. There was something here. Something alive. Something waiting. Lily stepped in after me, her tiny form barely visible in the shadows. "It's time," she whispered, as if she were speaking to herself more than to me. The vault was enormous, its walls lined with strange markings, symbols I couldn't understand. The floor was littered with ancient relics, broken artifacts, and objects that looked as though they had been untouched for centuries. But in the center of the room was the most intriguing and unsettling thing of all, a stone pedestal upon which sat an old, weathered chest. The chest was sealed shut with chains, its surface covered in more of the strange symbols. I could feel the weight of it, the ancient energy it contained, as if the chest itself were alive, breathing, waiting for someone to open it. Lily stepped forward, her small hands moving to the chains that bound the chest. She didn't hesitate, and neither did I. Something deep within me urged me to act. Maybe it was the biker in me, always seeking the thrill of danger. Maybe it was the promise of uncovering something hidden, something beyond my understanding. But as Lily's hands touched the chains, a voice, low and guttural, echoed through the chamber. "You shouldn't have come." The words seemed to reverberate through the walls, sending a chill down my spine. I turned sharply, my hand instinctively reaching for the gun I had holstered. But there was no one there, just the dark shadows of the vault. Lily didn't seem disturbed by the voice. Instead, she continued to work, the chains falling away one by one as if they were no more than old fabric. When the final chain hit the floor with a soft clang, she stood back, and the chest began to tremble. I felt it, the energy surging through the room like a living thing. "Lily, what the hell is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile calm that had taken over the vault. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "This is where it all began, and this is where it ends." The chest creaked open, and a blinding light poured out, filling the room with an unnatural glow. I shielded my eyes, instinctively stepping back. But Lily didn't move. She stood there, her eyes locked on the light, her body still as if she were in a trance. The hum grew louder, and I felt a pressure in my chest, as if the air itself were being squeezed out of me. Something powerful, ancient, and terrifying was coming from that chest, and it was about to be unleashed. I had no idea what I had just walked into, but I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I stood frozen, unable to look away from the blinding light pouring from the chest. The air was thick with energy, crackling with something ancient, something not meant to be disturbed. My heart raced in my chest, and for the first time in years, I felt fear. A raw, primal fear I hadn't experienced since I was a kid, standing in the dark, waiting for something that might never come. Lily stood motionless, her eyes locked on the light as though it were calling to her. I wanted to shout, to tell her to run, but my voice caught in my throat. I had no idea what we had just unleashed, but I knew it wasn't something we could control. As the light began to fade, the chest creaked, its ancient wood groaning like it was waking from a deep slumber. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust my eyes to the dimming light. Then, from within the chest, a figure began to form. It wasn't solid at first, just a swirl of mist and shadows, but then it slowly solidified into something resembling a person. A tall, thin figure, dressed in tattered robes, its face obscured by a dark hood. It exuded a malevolent presence, like it had been trapped here for centuries, waiting for someone to release it. The figure stepped forward, its movements fluid but unnatural, like it was floating just above the ground. The air grew colder as it approached. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The figure's voice was a low, echoing hiss that sent chills down my spine. "You have released me," it said, its voice distorted, as if coming from the very walls around us. "And now, you will face the consequences." The words hung in the air, thick with a sense of doom. I wanted to fight, to take action, but I was paralyzed, my mind racing to process what was happening. Lily didn't seem afraid. She just stood there, her small form still in the shadows, watching the figure. "Lily, get back." I managed to force out, finally finding my voice. But she didn't move. Instead, she looked up at me, her face calm, almost serene. "It's okay, Reaper," she said, her voice so quiet I could barely hear it over the figure's low, menacing hum. "He's not going to hurt me." I stared at her in disbelief. "What the hell are you talking about?" I took a step toward her, my hand instinctively reaching for the knife strapped to my side. The figure didn't react, though I could feel its presence growing stronger. "This is where it begins," Lily continued, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the start of something bigger, something that's been waiting for centuries." I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. "What the hell do you mean, Lily? Who is this?" But Lily didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, her small hand outstretched toward the figure. It was then that I understood. This wasn't just some random child lost in the woods. This girl was part of something much darker, something that I wasn't prepared to face. I didn't have time to think about it any longer. The figure's voice came again, sharper this time, almost like a command. "You will all serve the vault now." It hissed, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. The air around us seemed to shift, growing heavier, as if the very space we occupied was becoming twisted. I felt my chest tighten. "Serve the vault," I repeated, my mind struggling to make sense of the words. The figure nodded slowly, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. "You have awakened what was buried. Now, the world will pay the price." Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped even further. I could see my breath in the air as it turned to mist before me. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, the ancient markings on the vault glowing faintly as the figure continued to speak. "The vault is the key," it said, "and now, the time has come for it to be opened fully." I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to run. I knew I couldn't fight this. I had no idea what the figure was, but I understood enough to know that it was dangerous. But before I could make a move, Lily spoke again, her words steady and clear. "It's too late for that," she said. "This is happening whether you want it to or not." The figure extended its hand, and as it did, the vault behind it began to tremble. The ground beneath our feet rumbled, as if something massive was stirring below us. I glanced at Lily, desperate to understand, but her face was calm, her eyes locked on the figure, as though she knew exactly what was going to happen next. And then, with a deep, resonating sound, the vault began to open wider, the light spilling from within, engulfing everything in its path. I could feel the air vibrate with power, and I realized too late that there was no escaping this. Whatever this was, it was coming for all of us. I took a step back as the vault door swung wide open, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow inside. The air crackled with energy, vibrating like the hum of an electric current. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as the temperature dropped, my breath coming out in white puffs of mist. The figure stood motionless in the doorway, its presence looming over me like a dark cloud. It raised its hand, and the ground beneath my feet trembled. "It's too late," the figure said, its voice like a distant echo. "The time of awakening has come." I glanced at Lily, who stood beside me, her small face illuminated by the eerie glow of the vault. She wasn't afraid. She looked at peace. It was as though she had known this moment was inevitable, that it was always meant to happen. Lily, I whispered, my voice shaking. What is this? What are we dealing with here? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped forward, her tiny feet moving without hesitation toward the figure. I reached out, grabbing her arm, but she looked up at me with those calm, knowing eyes. It's all part of the plan, Reaper, she said softly. This is what I've been waiting for. Her words didn't make sense, and a cold wave of dread washed over me. Waiting for? I repeated, my grip tightening on her arm. You're telling me you knew all this time what was in that vault? She nodded slowly. I knew, but I didn't understand until now. The vault holds something powerful, and now, it's time to set it free. My heart pounded in my chest. But why me? Why are you bringing me into this? She looked down for a moment, then back up at me. Because you're the only one who can stop it. The figure let out a low laugh, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my bones. Stop it, it mocked. You cannot stop what has already begun. The vault is no longer a prison. It is a doorway. The energy around us grew stronger, the vault's light growing brighter, almost blinding. I shielded my eyes, but the intensity of the glow made it impossible to look away. I could feel it pulling at me, as though it were trying to draw me into the depths of its power. The figure stepped aside, allowing Lily to approach the chest in the center of the vault. As she did, the shadows in the room seemed to gather around her, as if they were watching her every move. You have no idea what you're unleashing, I said, my voice urgent. This could destroy everything. Lily stopped just before the chest, her fingers hovering over the ancient, rusted lock. I don't have a choice, Reaper, she said quietly. I have to do this. Before I could protest, she turned the lock. The sound of metal grinding against metal filled the air, and the chest creaked open. A blinding flash of light erupted from within, throwing me back against the stone wall. I shielded my eyes, but the light seemed to seep into my very soul. And then, as the light began to fade, I saw it. A dark shape, twisting and writhing, rising from within the chest. It wasn't human. It was something else, something ancient, something beyond comprehension. The air grew thick with a malevolent energy as the figure took shape. It was a creature of shadow and flame, its eyes glowing with an unnatural fire. It stepped forward, its massive form filling the vault, and I felt the ground tremble beneath its weight. You have awakened me, it said, its voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the earth itself. And now, the world will bow before me. My heart raced as I looked at Lily. She was standing still, her eyes locked on the creature, as though she had expected this moment. Lily, no, I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the creature's presence. The air was so thick with power that it was suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't think. All I could do was watch as the darkness around us deepened. You've made a grave mistake, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The creature's gaze shifted to me, and for the first time, I felt true fear. No mistake, it replied. I was never meant to stay locked away. I was always meant to be free. The temperature in the vault dropped even further, and I could see my breath in the air, swirling like smoke. What do you want? I demanded, trying to regain some sense of control. The creature's eyes flickered with amusement. I want everything, it said. The world has forgotten its place. I will remind it. I looked at Lily, desperately searching for some hint of understanding. But she only stood there, her face impassive, as though she had already accepted the creature's power. You can't let this happen, I said, my voice pleading. This thing will destroy everything. Lily turned to face me, her expression softening for the first time. I've already made my choice, she said quietly. Now it's your turn. I knew in that moment that there was no turning back. The creature's power was too great, and it was only a matter of time before it spread beyond this vault. I had to make a decision. I had to choose whether to fight, or to let this ancient power consume everything. But in the face of such darkness, I wasn't sure I had the strength to do either. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest as the dark creature before me began to materialize fully. The air in the vault was thick with its presence, the atmosphere pulsing with an energy so dense it felt like I was suffocating. The ground trembled beneath my feet as the creature took another step forward, its shadowed form towering over us. Its eyes, glowing with a fierce, unnatural fire, locked onto mine, and I could feel the weight of its gaze, as though it was seeing into my very soul. Lily stood motionless beside me, her expression distant, almost vacant, as if she was no longer fully present in this world. The creature, or whatever it was, tilted its head slightly, studying me. "You still don't understand, do you?" It rumbled, its voice like a deep, guttural growl that resonated within the walls of the vault. "You were never meant to stop me. No one was." I opened my mouth to speak, to try and figure out a way to fight back, but my words caught in my throat. What could I say to something so powerful, so ancient, that its mere presence felt like it could tear the world apart? The creature laughed then, a sound that echoed through the chamber, causing the shadows to shift and dance around us. "You've already released me, biker. There is no going back now." My mind raced. This wasn't just some mythical being. This was something that had been locked away for centuries, a force of darkness and destruction that had now found its freedom. And Lily had helped release it. "Why?" I asked, my voice hoarse, barely able to carry the weight of the question. "Why did you bring me here? Why did you choose me?" Lily's eyes flickered, but she didn't look at me. She remained focused on the creature, as if she were mesmerized by it. "You were always meant to play a part, Reaper," she said softly, her voice almost distant. "You just didn't know it." I turned to her, disbelief flooding my mind. "A part in what?" "In helping this thing destroy the world." Lily shook her head, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. "No, not destroy," she whispered. "It's about rebirth. This world is dying, Reaper. The vault holds the key to something greater than any of us could ever imagine." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had always known there was something different about Lily, but I never imagined she would be involved in something like this. Something so dangerous, so dark. I turned back to the creature, still looming before me. "What are you going to do now?" I demanded, my voice stronger despite the fear gnawing at me. "What do you want?" The creature's lips curled into a sinister smile, its teeth sharp and gleaming like polished obsidian. "I want what has always been mine," it said, its voice laced with malice. "The world, the power, the souls of those foolish enough to stand in my way. This is just the beginning, Reaper." The room around us seemed to close in, the walls narrowing as though the very space we occupied was warping. I could feel the pull of the creature's power, a magnetic force drawing me in, filling me with a sense of dread unlike anything I had ever experienced. I tried to take a step back, but my body wouldn't move. The creature's influence was too strong, its power overwhelming. "There's no escape," the creature continued, its voice now reverberating through the entire vault. "You've already opened the door. Now, the rest of the world will follow." I fought to shake off the paralysis that gripped me, but it was no use. I was trapped. "Lily," I croaked, trying to reach her, trying to make sense of this madness. "We need to stop this." But she didn't move. She just stood there, her gaze fixed on the creature. "It's too late, Reaper," she said softly. "We've already crossed the point of no return." Panic surged in my chest as the reality of the situation hit me. We were no longer in control. The creature had already begun its awakening, and there was nothing we could do to stop it. The ground beneath us shook again, and I felt the pressure building, like the entire world was on the verge of collapsing. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing for certain. The world as I knew it was about to change forever. The creature's laugh filled the vault, drowning out all other sounds. It was a sound of victory, of power, and of something far more terrifying than I could ever comprehend. "It's time to begin," it said. And with that, the walls of the vault seemed to explode outward, and the world beyond began to tremble in response to the chaos we had unleashed. I could feel the ground tremble beneath my feet as the creature's power swelled, sending vibrations through the very air. The vault seemed to shudder in response, the walls closing in tighter, as if the space itself was becoming an extension of the malevolent force that had been unleashed. The shadows in the room grew longer, twisting into grotesque shapes that moved on their own accord. The walls that had once been firm, solid stone were now alive with dark energy. I turned to Lily, who still stood motionless, her eyes glazed over in a trance-like state. Her expression was distant, as if she were no longer part of this world. "Lily, snap out of it!" I shouted, but she didn't react. It was like she was being drawn deeper into the creature's grip, and I had no idea how to reach her. I reached out to grab her, but the air between us seemed to stretch, a thick barrier that kept me from getting any closer. It was as though some invisible force was preventing me from moving, binding me in place. The creature's laugh echoed around us, its voice resonating in my bones, vibrating in the very air. "You cannot stop what has already begun," it said, its tone filled with triumph. "This world is mine now. All that is left is to watch it burn." I felt a surge of anger rise up within me. I wasn't going to let this thing destroy everything. I had fought battles before, and I wasn't about to back down now. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto mine, its gaze piercing, as if it could see every doubt, every fear, and every regret that I carried. It was playing with me, toying with me, trying to break my spirit before it finished what it had started. But I wasn't going to give it that satisfaction. I had to find a way to stop it. But first, I had to break Lily free. I couldn't do this alone. "Lily," I yelled again, my voice raw with desperation. "Wake up. This isn't you. You don't have to do this." For a moment, there was no response. The creature's presence seemed to fill every corner of the room, suffocating me, but I couldn't give in. I had to fight for her. I had to fight for us. And then, just as I was about to give up, I saw it. A flicker of movement in Lily's eyes. For the briefest moment, they focused on me, and I saw something behind them, something more than the trance she had been under. There was still hope. "Lily," I said, my voice soft but firm. "I know you can hear me. You're stronger than this. You've always been stronger than this. Don't let it control you." The creature hissed, its form twisting with anger. "Stop," it growled. "You have no power here. She is mine now." But I wasn't listening. I kept my focus on Lily, watching her closely, waiting for the moment she would break free. Slowly, I saw her blink, then another, and finally, she took a deep breath, her shoulders tensing. The grip on her mind seemed to falter for just a second, and in that moment, I grabbed her hand. "Come on, Lily. You can do this." The creature roared in fury, but I didn't look at it. I couldn't afford to. The light in the vault was blinding now, but Lily's hand squeezed mine, and I knew she was coming back. "I'm here, Reaper," she whispered, her voice shaky but clear. "I don't know how, but I'm here." The creature lunged forward, but just as it did, Lily's eyes snapped open, and a burst of energy shot from her, slamming the creature back. I stumbled, nearly losing my balance, but Lily held me steady. "We're not done yet," she said, her voice steady now, filled with a newfound strength. "We have to stop it. We have to close the vault before it's too late." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation bear down on me, but also a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could still make it out of here. The creature snarled, its form flickering and shifting, but it was weakening. Lily's power was growing, and with it, the grip of the creature started to loosen. I took a deep breath. This was it. The vault had to close, and we had to make sure that nothing, escaped from it again. I reached for the vault's door, my hand trembling, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I could feel Lily's power surging through me, lending me strength. Together, we could stop this. Together, we would seal the darkness away forever. But as I turned the handle, a voice echoed in my head, a warning, a threat from the creature. "You cannot close it," it hissed. "The vault is only a beginning. You cannot destroy what has been awakened." I gritted my teeth. "Watch me." With a force I didn't know I had, I slammed the door shut. There was a moment of silence, then a deafening sound, like the world itself being torn in two. I felt the ground beneath my feet crack, the walls groaning as the energy of the vault fought against us. But we held firm. The vault door clanged shut, and for the first time since we entered, there was silence. The oppressive darkness lifted, and the air grew still. We had done it. The creature's power was sealed away, locked in the vault. Once more? But I knew this wasn't the end. It had been stopped for now, but the price of awakening something so ancient was not something I could easily ignore. I looked at Lily, who was panting beside me, her face pale but determined. "We won this round," I said, my voice hoarse. "But we both know it's not over. It's only just beginning." She nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "I know. But for now, we've stopped it. And that's enough." I stood there, breathless, my heart pounding in my chest, staring at the vault door we had just sealed. The silence in the room was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had filled the air just moments ago. The pressure, the darkness, the crushing weight of the creature's power. It was all gone, but not without leaving a deep scar on the world. My hands still trembled from the effort it took to close the door, the final act that had sealed the evil away, for now. I glanced over at Lily, standing beside me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with exhaustion, but there was a new kind of strength in them now, a strength that I hadn't seen before. She was still the same girl who had led me into this madness, but she wasn't the same. The thing she had unlocked had changed her, and I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. "Lily," I said, my voice hoarse from the ordeal. "Are you okay?" She didn't respond at first. Her gaze was fixed on the vault, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. The intensity of her focus was unsettling. Finally, she turned to me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Regret? "I'm fine," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But we need to leave. This place, it's not safe anymore." I nodded, but my mind was racing. The creature was sealed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. We had stopped it for now, but I had no illusion that this was the end. The darkness had been unleashed, and the world would feel its effects soon enough. "We'll leave," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But where do we go from here? We can't just walk away and pretend like everything's normal." Lily looked down at the ground for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "I know," she said, her voice quiet. "But there's no going back now. We've set something in motion, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right. The creature, whatever it was, had been locked away for centuries, but it was never meant to stay there forever. And now it was free, its influence already spreading. I didn't know how long we had before the world began to feel the full weight of its power. I turned to look at the vault one last time. The door was still shut, but I knew that the evil within it wasn't gone. It was only waiting for the right moment to break free again. "How do we stop it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lily's eyes softened. "I don't know," she said. "But we can't do it alone." I nodded slowly. This wasn't something we could fight on our own. The creature was far too powerful, and the forces it controlled were beyond anything I had ever faced. But we weren't alone. We had allies. We had each other. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of hope flicker inside me. We might not have all the answers, but we had a chance. "Then we'll find help," I said, determination rising in my chest. "We'll figure this out. Together." Lily nodded, her expression serious. "We need to get out of here first. We're not safe yet." I turned to her, ready to follow her lead. We had no time to waste. The world was changing, and we had no choice but to move forward, whatever that might mean. As we made our way to the exit, the vault, the weight of everything we had just done pressing heavily on my chest. Lily was a few steps ahead of me, moving with a quiet determination, her eyes focused on the path ahead. The vault was sealed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still being watched, that the creature's presence lingered, even though it was locked away. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, as though the very earth was trembling in response to what we had just unleashed. I glanced over at Lily. She didn't seem shaken by what had happened. In fact, she seemed more resolute than ever. But there was something in her eyes that I couldn't quite place. Was it fear or something else? "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice rough from the tension. Lily didn't look at me right away. She just kept walking, her steps steady, but I could see the way her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice didn't sound as certain as her words. "We've done what we can. For now, it's enough." I nodded, though my own uncertainty gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that sealing the vault wasn't the end of this nightmare. It was just the beginning. The creature may have been trapped, but its influence was still out there. The world was already beginning to feel its effects. I could see it in the way the air around us felt thick, heavy, as if the atmosphere itself was charged with something dark and powerful. We had no idea what was coming next. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever it was, we couldn't face it alone. As we reached the door leading out of the underground chamber, Lily turned to face me, her expression grave. "We need to find help," she said, her voice low. "This isn't over. The creature's just the beginning. There's something much bigger at play here." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? What's bigger than that thing?" Lily's gaze hardened, her eyes filled with a determination I hadn't seen before. There's a force behind it all, a darkness that's been building for centuries, and we've just scratched the surface. My heart sank. So what do we do now? I asked, my mind racing with all the possibilities. Lily took a deep breath and turned toward the door. We find the others. We need to stop this before it spreads any further. I followed her, but doubt lingered in my mind. I had always thought I was prepared for anything, battles, danger, even death. But this was different. There was no handbook for this kind of fight. We were up against something ancient, something that had been hidden away for a reason. And now that it was free, who knew what kind of destruction it would bring? As we made our way through the dark corridors of the underground facility, I couldn't help but feel the weight of our situation. The world we had known was no longer the same. The creature's release had set something in motion, something we couldn't control, and I had no idea if we were strong enough to stop it. We had to act fast, but the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Do you really think we can stop it? I asked, my voice quieter now. After everything we've seen? Lily didn't hesitate. We have to, she said, her voice unwavering. There's no other choice. The world depends on it. We emerged from the underground facility and into the night air. The world outside seemed unchanged, but I knew that was an illusion. The sky above was the same. The stars still twinkled in the dark, but something felt different. The air was charged, like the calm before a storm. Lily led the way, her steps purposeful as she walked toward the nearest road. We need to find the others, she said again. There's a network of people who know what's going on. We're not the only ones who can see the truth. I didn't ask who these people were. I didn't care. All I cared about now was finding a way to stop whatever was coming. As we walked, the sense of dread grew stronger, the weight of our mission settling on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. We couldn't afford to waste any more time. The creature's influence was spreading, and we needed to act before it was too late. What exactly are we looking for? I asked as we neared the road. Lily glanced back at me, her face serious. Answers. Allies. And the key to ending this. I didn't ask what the key was. I didn't need to know. All that mattered now was getting to the next step. We had no idea what lay ahead, but we had to be ready for anything. The world was changing, and we were caught in the middle of it. And as we stepped onto the road, I knew that there was no turning back. Whatever came next, we would face it together. I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me as we continued down the road. The world felt quieter now, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The night sky above was still, but the air was thick with an unsettling energy, as though everything was about to shift. Lily walked ahead of me, her steps determined, but I could see the strain in her posture. She was tired, we both were, but there was no time to rest. Not until we found the answers we were looking for. How far? I asked, my voice breaking the silence. She glanced back at me, her expression unreadable. Not far, she said. There's a place. We'll find them there. I didn't ask who they were. I didn't need to. I had learned not to question her. Not after everything we had been through. We had no answers. Only the certainty that something dark was spreading, and we were the ones who had to stop it. As we walked, I could feel the unease growing. It was in the air, in the way the shadows seemed to stretch longer, darker than they should have. The creature, though sealed away, was still out there, its influence spreading like a sickness, infecting everything in its path. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I instinctively glanced over my shoulder. Nothing, just the empty road behind us. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Lily stopped suddenly, her head turning as if she had sensed something too. Her eyes scanned the darkened road ahead, her body tensing, and I knew something was coming. Stay close, she said softly, her voice carrying a warning. I didn't need to be told twice. I closed the distance between us, my hand instinctively moving to the knife at my side. We were alone on this road, miles away from civilization, but I knew we weren't really alone. Something, or someone was out there. I could feel it. Lily's eyes darted to the trees that lined the road, her gaze sharp and focused. She didn't flinch when a rustling sound came from the shadows ahead. Instead, she stepped forward, her posture straight and unwavering. I followed her lead, my senses on high alert. Who's there? She called out, her voice steady but with an edge of authority. There was a long moment of silence, and then I saw movement. A figure stepped out from the trees, tall and cloaked in shadow, his face obscured by the darkness. He moved like a predator, deliberate and cautious, his eyes never leaving us. I tensed, ready to fight, but Lily didn't seem afraid. In fact, she seemed almost relieved. "You found us," she said, her voice softening. The figure stepped closer, and I could make out more details. A tall man, heavily built, his clothes worn and weathered, much like a biker from the old days. But there was something else about him, something familiar. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice gravelly and low. "It's about time." I didn't trust him, not yet. But Lily's reaction told me that this was no ordinary stranger. She knew him. "This is where we begin," she said, turning to me. "We need him. He's the key to finding the others." The man nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on me. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "Lily's told me a lot about you. Reaper, right?" I didn't answer right away. It wasn't my name that mattered now. It was the situation we were facing. "We don't have time for introductions," I said, my voice low and urgent. "We need to figure out how to stop this before it's too late." The man's expression hardened, and he stepped closer, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "We don't stop it," he said, his voice serious. "We contain it. There's a difference." I frowned, not understanding. "Contain it?" I repeated. "How do we contain something like that?" He looked at Lily, then back at me. "You'll understand soon enough. But first, we need to get to a safe place. There's too much at stake here." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't have time for questions. The sense of urgency was growing stronger, and I knew there was no time to waste. We had to move fast. The world was already changing. The creatures. Release had set something in motion, and we needed to stay one step ahead of whatever came next. "Lead the way," I said, my voice firm. We had no choice but to trust this man. The stakes were too high, and as we followed him down the darkened road, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Whatever this man knew, whatever secrets he held, we were about to find out, and we had to be ready for whatever lay ahead. I followed the man as he led us down the dark, winding road. Lily was ahead of me, her pace steady, but I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. We had just sealed away an ancient evil, but the truth was that the world was still in danger, and I wasn't sure what we were walking into next. The man who had joined us, he looked like someone who had lived through his own share of battles, his worn leather jacket and rugged features speaking of a lifetime of struggles. He wasn't someone I could trust immediately, but I knew we had no choice but to follow his lead. "You said you were waiting for us," I said, trying to make sense of what was happening. "How do you know us? How do you know Lily?" The man glanced over his shoulder, his eyes sharp, calculating. "I've been keeping an eye on things for a long time," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "Lily and I go way back. She's always known more than she's let on." I looked at Lily, who hadn't said a word since we met the man. She was walking ahead, her shoulders tense, but her face was unreadable. "How much does she know?" I asked, my voice low. "She's been involved in this for a long time, Reaper," the man replied. "She's more connected to what's happening than you realize. The creature we sealed away isn't the only threat we're facing." My heart sank as the weight of his words settled in. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. "There's something bigger," he continued. "Something older than the creature we sealed away. It's been waiting, watching, and now it's starting to stir. It's been pulling strings for centuries, and Lily—" He trailed off, as if he was reluctant to say more. Lily stopped walking, turning to face us. Her eyes were cold, distant, but there was a hint of something beneath the surface, a determination that hadn't been there before. "What are you trying to say?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. She met my gaze, her expression unreadable. "You're not ready for everything, Reaper," she said quietly. "But you're going to have to be. We've only just begun." The man's eyes flickered between us, and for a brief moment, I saw something in his gaze, recognition, maybe even a hint of fear. "She's right," he said, his voice grim. "You've only seen the beginning. The real danger is still out there, and we need to find it before it finds us." I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of everything. I had been through enough in my life to know that this wasn't just some coincidence. The stakes were higher than I had imagined. I had no idea what Lily had gotten us into, but I knew one thing for sure. We had no choice but to face whatever came next. The man turned back and began walking again, his steps steady as if he knew exactly where he was going. There's a place we can go, he said, not looking back. A group of people who know what's happening. We need to get there, fast. We walked in silence for a while, the night air thick with tension. The road ahead seemed endless, but I kept moving, following Lily and the man who seemed to know more than he was telling us. As we neared a small cabin on the outskirts of town, the man stopped and turned to face us. This is it, he said. This is where we regroup, and where we start preparing for what's coming. I didn't ask any more questions. I just nodded, feeling the weight of what was about to unfold. Inside the cabin, a fire burned in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. A few people sat around a table, their faces grim and tired. As soon as the man entered, they stood up, recognizing him immediately. We've got work to do, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The people around the table nodded and began moving quickly, preparing for whatever was coming. One of them, a woman with short, dark hair, approached me. You're the one who sealed the vault, aren't you? She asked, her voice curious but cautious. What happened in there? I paused, unsure how much to say. I looked at Lily, who was standing quietly in the corner, her gaze distant again. We sealed it, I said finally. But I don't think it's over. The creature's gone, but there's something else. Something bigger. And it's coming for us. The woman nodded slowly, as if she had been expecting this. We've known for a while that the creature wasn't the only threat, she said. We've been preparing for the worst, but it's worse than we thought. I looked around the room at the people who were gathered there. They were ready, focused, but they were also scared. The kind of fear you couldn't ignore. What do we do next? I asked, the words coming out sharper than I meant. The man who had led us here stepped forward. We get ready for the storm, he said, and we make sure we're not caught off guard when it hits. As I took in his words, I felt the reality of our situation set in. We were no longer just trying to survive. We were preparing for a fight that would determine everything. And this time, there would be no running, no hiding. We were going to face it head on. I could feel the weight of the responsibility pressing on me, but I wasn't alone. I had Lily, and I had these people, these strangers who were ready to fight alongside us. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Let's do this, I said. Let's stop this before it's too late. I sat in the cabin, the fire crackling in the hearth, as the team around me prepared for what was to come. The man who had led us here, and who now stood beside me, was talking to the others, giving them orders, but his eyes kept drifting back to me, as if waiting for something. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, a sense of urgency that I couldn't escape. We were running out of time. The creature we had sealed away was just one piece of the puzzle, but there was something much bigger lurking in the shadows, something that had been pulling strings long before we even knew it existed. Lily was sitting by the window, her face still as stone, her eyes distant as if lost in thought. I could feel her tension, could sense the burden she was carrying, but she wasn't speaking. She hadn't said much since we sealed the vault. The others in the room were busy, each one preparing in their own way, but I knew none of us were truly ready for what lay ahead. We had no idea what we were facing. All we had were fragments of a puzzle that didn't seem to fit together, and a growing sense of dread that there was no way out of this. The man next to me, whose name I still didn't know, looked over at me again. You've done well so far, he said, his voice low but steady. But this is just the beginning. We need to prepare for what's coming. It's not going to be easy. I met his gaze, and for the first time, I noticed the lines of exhaustion on his face. He wasn't some hardened soldier. He was just a man who had seen too much, a man who had been fighting this battle for longer than I had known. He had his own demons. What exactly are we preparing for? I asked, my voice tight. We've sealed the vault. We've stopped the creature. Isn't that enough? He shook his head slowly, his expression grim. No, the creature was never the true threat. It was just a pawn. The real danger is much older, much more powerful. It's been waiting for centuries, and it's only a matter of time before it finds its way out. We need to stop it before it can gather the strength to do so. My mind raced as I tried to process his words. What is it? What exactly are we facing? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped away and began rummaging through a stack of papers on a nearby table. He pulled out a faded map and spread it across the surface. It was old, the edges torn and frayed, but it was clear enough. There were markings on the map, symbols, locations, most of them unfamiliar. He traced his finger along one of the lines. This, he said, tapping the map, is where it begins. There's a place, hidden away, that's been a focal point for the power that's been brewing. If we don't stop it now, it'll spread, and we won't be able to contain it. I looked at the map, trying to make sense of it, but the symbols meant nothing to me. Where is this place? I asked. The man pointed to a spot on the map. Here. It's an old, abandoned church in the middle of nowhere. It was once a site of dark rituals. The creature we sealed was part of something much bigger, something that's been operating for generations. So, what's in the church? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to Lily, who had stood up and walked over to join us. She looked at the map, her eyes scanning the markings with an intensity that sent a chill through me. I know this place, she said, her voice low. I've seen it in visions. It's where everything began. My pulse quickened as I turned to look at her. What do you mean? What's there? She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the man. He didn't speak, but I could see the understanding between them, as if they were both holding back something they weren't ready to reveal. There's a doorway, Lily said quietly. A doorway to something beyond this world. Something that was sealed away long ago. And if it's opened again, the world as we know it will change forever. My mind raced as the weight of her words hit me. A doorway. Something beyond this world. It sounded like madness, but I knew Lily wasn't one to speak lightly. She had seen things none of us could understand. How do we stop it? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of fear raging inside me. Lily looked at me, her face softening. We don't stop it, she said quietly. We contain it. We have to close the door before it's too late. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Contain it? How could we contain something so powerful? I wasn't sure we had the strength to do that. The man's voice broke through my thoughts. We have the tools, he said, his tone urgent. But we need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely it is that the door will open. We have to get to the church and stop it before the ritual is completed. I nodded, feeling a surge of determination flood my chest. We were running out of time, but we couldn't waste any more of it. Then let's go, I said. We don't have time to waste. The man gave a sharp nod. Get ready. We leave in an hour. As the others began to prepare, I could feel the weight of the situation settling heavily on my shoulders. We were going to face the unknown, and I had no idea what we would find. But one thing was certain. We were in this together, and we would fight to the end. Whatever came next, we were ready. I stood in the cabin, trying to steady my breath as the weight of the situation pressed down on me. We had made it this far, but I knew deep down that the hardest part was still ahead. Lily, the man who had joined us, and the others who had gathered in the cabin were preparing for what came next, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. The church we were heading to was not just some abandoned building. It was a place of power, a place where something ancient and dangerous had been sealed away for centuries. And now, that seal was weakening. The door we had closed in the vault was not the end of the thread. It was only a temporary measure. Lily stood near the window, her face bathed in the dim light of the cabin's single lamp, her eyes focused on the horizon. I could see the uncertainty in her gaze, but also the resolve. She had known what was coming long before I did, but even she wasn't prepared for this. The world was changing, and there was no going back. I walked over to her, feeling the weight of every step I took. Lily, I said softly, my voice carrying the weight of everything we had been through. Are you sure about this? Do you really think we can stop it? She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who had been lost and afraid. But then it was gone, replaced by someone much older, someone who had seen too much. I don't know if we can stop it, she said quietly. But we have to try. We can't let it win. Her words echoed in my mind as I looked at her. She was right. We had no choice. There was too much at stake. We had to find the others, those who had been waiting for us, and we had to stop the ritual before it was too late. The man who had joined us earlier walked over, his face serious. It's time, he said. We have everything we need. We move out now. Without another word, he turned and headed toward the door. Lily and I followed, stepping out into the cold night air. The road was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. Every step we took seemed to echo in the emptiness, like we were being washed by something that wasn't quite human. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel that we were being drawn into something much bigger than we could ever understand. The church was only the beginning. We had no idea what we would find there, but I knew it was something that could change the world. The man led the way, his pace steady and sure. He knew this road, knew where it would take us, but the rest of us were left to follow in silence. Lily stayed close to me, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if expecting something to jump out from the shadows. I could feel the weight of her worry, but she didn't let it show. She was determined, and that gave me hope. We walked for what felt like hours, the silence broken only by the occasional sound of our footsteps crunching on the gravel. I tried to focus on the task ahead, but my mind kept drifting back to the vault, to the creature we had sealed away, to the doorway that had been opened. What was waiting for us at the church? What would we find there that could change everything? We reached the outskirts of town, just as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon. The church was still a few miles away, but I could see the outline of the building in the distance, dark and foreboding against the pale morning sky. It looked abandoned, but I knew that was just an illusion. The power inside that church had been dormant for centuries, but now it was waking up, and we were walking straight into its grasp. The man stopped suddenly, his hand raised to signal us to halt. I looked around, my senses on high alert, but I saw nothing out of the ordinary. "We're close," he said quietly. "Stay alert. The church is protected, but the closer we get, the stronger the presence becomes." I nodded, my hand instinctively going to the knife at my side. I had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the future of the world. The man turned and began walking again, his pace quickening. We followed, our footsteps now urgent, as if we were racing against time. The closer we got to the church, the stronger the pull I felt. It was like something was drawing me toward it, an invisible force that seemed to grow with every step. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling only grew stronger. We reached the church in the early morning light, the building looming before us like a dark sentinel. The doors were massive, ancient, and covered in symbols I didn't recognize. They were the same symbols I had seen in the vault, the same ones that had been carved into the walls. The man stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward the door. "This is it," he said, his voice tense. "We need to be ready for anything." I nodded, my heart racing in my chest. This was the moment we had been preparing for, the moment where everything we had done would either save the world or condemn it. The man pushed open the door, and we stepped inside, the cold air of the church washing over us. The silence was deafening. We were no longer just trying to survive. Now, we were fighting for the world. I could feel the air change the moment we stepped inside the church. The heavy wooden doors creaked as they closed behind us, sealing us in. The place was ancient, filled with the scent of dust and decay, but there was something else, an energy that hummed in the walls, in the very floor beneath my feet. It was as though the church itself was alive, waiting for something, or perhaps someone. The others moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the dimly lit interior. The man who had led us here stood at the front, his face grim. "This is where it all began," he said quietly, almost to himself. Lily was close behind, her face unreadable, but I could feel the tension in her every movement. She had known this place long before we had arrived, and now we were standing on the edge of whatever it was she had been preparing for. I looked around, taking in the ancient stained glass windows that lined the walls, their colors muted and faded by time. The pews were broken, some of them toppled over, as if the church had been abandoned long ago. But it was far from empty now. The silence that hung in the air was suffocating, like the calm before a storm. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man turned to me, his eyes sharp. "We find the altar," he said. "It's the key. The ritual has already begun, but we can still stop it. We just have to make it to the altar before it's too late." The words hung in the air, thick with urgency. My mind raced as I tried to understand what he meant. The ritual? What kind of ritual was he talking about? And what was the altar supposed to do? Before I could ask, Lily spoke, her voice steady but filled with an unmistakable determination. "We don't have much time," she said. "The door we closed in the vault was just a temporary measure. The power behind it is still growing, and if we don't stop it here, now, it will spread." My heart sank. I knew that this was it, the moment we had been preparing for. But even with all the training, all the preparation, I wasn't sure if we could actually stop what had been set in motion. The man motioned for us to follow him as he moved deeper into the church. "Stay close," he said, his voice low. The altar is in the back. We'll need to perform the counter ritual before the creature can fully emerge. I followed him, my steps echoing in the vast, empty space. Lily walked beside me, her face set with a determination that was both comforting and terrifying. She knew what was at stake. She had known all along. We reached the back of the church, and I saw it, the altar. It was a large stone slab, covered in ancient symbols, with candles placed around it in a perfect circle. The air around it seemed to hum with power, the energy palpable. I could feel it, a force so strong that it made my skin tingle. This was where it would all be decided. This was where we would either stop the chaos or let it consume everything. The man stood in front of the altar, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for an old tome that lay on the stone. "We need to perform the ritual exactly as it was intended," he said, his voice grim. "There can be no mistakes. If we fail, everything will be lost." I swallowed hard. There was no turning back now. Lily stepped forward, her eyes focused on the altar. "We have to trust each other," she said softly, almost to herself. "This is the only way." The man nodded, flipping open the tome to a page filled with more of the cryptic symbols that had been etched into the vault. "Get ready," he said. "Once we start, there's no stopping until it's finished." I took a deep breath and nodded. My hands were sweating, my heart racing, but I knew there was no choice. We had come this far, and there was no going back. The man began chanting, his voice low and steady. The words were foreign, but they felt like they were resonating deep within me. Lily and I stood beside him, each of us taking a place around the altar. As the chant grew louder, I felt the power in the room grow stronger, the air thickening with the energy that had been building for centuries. I closed my eyes, focusing on the words, on the ritual. We had to stop it. We had to stop the creature from emerging. I could feel something stirring beneath the church, something dark and ancient, pushing against the seal that had been placed on it. The creature was waking. I opened my eyes just as the ground began to shake, the altar glowing with a blinding light. The air around us crackled with electricity, and I felt a pressure building in my chest. "We're almost there," the man said, his voice strained. "Just a little longer." The pressure intensified, and I could feel the energy building to a breaking point. The creature was almost free, and if we didn't finish the ritual now, we would all be consumed by it. I focused on the words, on the chant, pouring everything I had into it. The light from the altar blazed brighter, the ground shaking harder, and for a moment, I thought we had failed. But then, just as the pressure reached its peak, a pulse of energy shot out from the altar, filling the room with a deafening roar. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes from the light, but when I looked up, I saw it. The creature was gone. The light faded, and the church fell silent once more. We had done it. We had sealed it away. But as I looked at Lily, I knew this was just the beginning. The creature was gone, but there were more battles to fight, more darkness to face. We had won, but the war was far from over.